Welcome, dreamers. Tonight we sail far beyond the reach of maps, to a place whispered of in lullabies and legends. A place where white marble towers once touched the stars, and the sea carried the dreams of a forgotten people. This is Atlantis. On this night, under a sky of trembling stars, you will hear the final whispers of the island as it slowly drifts into memory. No storm, no roar of war, only the quiet song of an ending the world would never see again. Close your eyes, listen to the ocean's breath, and let the last night of Atlantis carry you into sleep, where myths become dreams, and dreams become forever. Welcome to Dream Atlas. Welcome to the night the island sank. The night sky above Atlantis shimmered like a sea of forgotten dreams. High above the island, stars drifted slowly across the velvet heavens, glowing with a soft, silvery light that painted the marble temples in hues of pearl and ghostly blue. The twin moons of the world hovered low, casting twin shadows across the hills, and the ocean that surrounded the island breathed in long, rhythmic sighs, like a sleeping giant. All was still. At the heart of the island, in the great city of Atlantis, a bell rang once, low and distant, like thunder remembered in a dream. It was the bell of Aetherion, only struck when the stars moved in rare alignment. And tonight, they had begun to move. From the highest tower of the Celestial Academy, a boy named Elion sat at his window and listened to the bell's whisper, a quiet dreamer who preferred scrolls and stories over swordplay and ceremony. His room overlooked the city's eastern edge, where the Temple of Light rose like a pearl tower from the cliffs. From here, he could see the lanterns swaying in the temple breeze, hear the gentle song of waves far below, and feel the faint tremble in the air. It wasn't fear, not yet. It was something older, something deep. He turned a page in the book resting on his lap. The title was inked in fading gold, Echoes of the First Sea, Myths of the Drowned Time. And there, written in spidery ink, was the legend his grandfather used to tell him. When the final flame flickers in the heart of the island, and the stars align in silence, Atlantis shall breathe its last. But even as it sinks, it will whisper, and in that whisper, dreams shall sail beyond the sea. Elion ran a finger over the words. He didn't know why, but tonight they felt more real than ever before. He closed the book gently. In the courtyard below, priests began lighting the spiral of lanterns, a tradition that only took place once every 1,000 nights. Each lantern glowed like a captured star, and one by one they were placed in a spiraling path that led from the temple steps down to the sea. The Whispering Spiral, they called it. It was said that if one stood at its center and listened, they could hear the voices of the deep. Some believed they were memories. Some said they were the souls of those who once dreamed here. Elion stood and pressed his forehead to the cool glass. Far in the distance, a storm flickered beyond the horizon. A single flash of gold behind heavy clouds. The wind had shifted too, carrying with it the scent of the old world, salt and rain and something else, like stone crumbling underwater. He turned to gather his cloak. Tonight something is beginning. And though the world around him still slept in peace and beauty, Elian's heart whispered something older than fear. The island knows. In the city's grand amphitheater, carved into the living stone of the mountain and bathed in golden light, the people of Atlantis had gathered. They came from every province, proud seafarers of the Sapphire Coast, stargazers from the Obsidian Hills, flame keepers of the Inner Temple, and pearl divers from the southern reefs. All stood side by side beneath the glowing arches of the Temple of Solara, dressed in flowing garments woven from moon thread and sea lace, faces painted with symbols from dreams. Tonight, they believed, was a celebration. They called it the Festival of the Last Dawn, not out of fear, but tradition. Every 1,000 years, the high oracles would declare a final dawn before a great transformation. The old would fall away, they said, and the new would rise like a phoenix from the deep. No one believed it meant the end. They believed it meant change, a rebirth, and so they danced. Children spun between lantern poles, their laughter echoing like wind chimes. Musicians played ancient harps strung with crystal sinew, the sound mingling with flutes that mimicked whale song and drums that rumbled like the seabed. The air was thick with the scent of dream spice and rose fruit, the flavors of memory. High above them, on the balcony of the oracle's dome, the Council of 12 watched in ceremonial silence. Each wore robes embroidered with the constellations, and their eyes glowed faintly with the mark of the inner flame. In the center of the 12 stood Archon Lyris, the oldest and last living oracle of the dream cycle. Her voice had not been heard in over a century, but they said she could speak directly to the waters of time. Tonight, she did not speak. She listened to the wind, to the earth, to the hush between heartbeats, and to the low, steady groan rising beneath the temple floor, so subtle that only she seemed to feel it. From the shadows below the amphitheater, the flame dancers emerged. Clad in obsidian silk and crowned with fireglass, they moved in slow spirals, balancing bowls of eternal flame in their palms. These fires were sacred, said to be fragments of the first light, carried from the stars when Atlantis first rose. But as they danced, some of the flames flickered, a rare thing. One even vanished for a moment. Only Lyris saw it. Only she knew what it meant. The people cheered, unaware. They clapped and sang and whispered wishes into the night sky, releasing floating lanterns into the warm breeze. Thousands of tiny lights drifted upward, joining the stars. It was a night of beauty, a night of forgetting. For the dream of Atlantis was never meant to end in fire. It was meant to fade, like a candle in the wind, leaving behind only warmth and memory. Elian had made his way into the city center, eyes wide, heart full. He watched the dancers. He heard the bells. And for the first time in many seasons, he felt truly awake. And yet, when he passed a fountain at the temple's edge, he saw something strange. A statue of Poseidon, lord of the sea, protector of the island, was weeping. Not water, not salt, but black tears that shimmered like ink in moonlight. He blinked, and they were gone. The stars had always whispered to Elion. From the time he was a boy, tracing constellations in the night sky with ink-stained fingers, to now, an apprentice to the celestial archivists of Atlantis, he had trusted the firmament more than the tides, the wind, even the words of men. Beneath the glass dome of the astral conservatory, Elion stood alone. Around him hung great circular maps, etched in gold on blue obsidian, each one a reflection of the heavens through the centuries. Star charts, arranged like mandalas, rotating orbs that mimicked planetary motion, gears that ticked in silence. It was a place of order, of deep breath at a deep time. And tonight, something had changed. The great sky disk in the center of the observatory, a wheel as tall as a giant, inscribed with the names of every known constellation, had rotated on its own. Not once, but 3 full revolutions. It had never done that before. Not even during eclipses. Not during comets. Only when Elion didn't finish the thought. His fingers traced the rim of the disk until they stopped at a symbol, one he had never seen before. It was not in any archive, not in any teaching scroll. A symbol of a spiral, but unlike any Atlantean glyph. It looked older, deeper, as if it didn't represent a place, but a memory. He reached for the star key on his pendant, shaped like a crescent fishbone, and inserted it into the center of the disk. The gears unlocked. A hidden panel slid open beneath his feet. He stepped down into darkness. There, beneath the observatory, was a room no one had entered in generations. Its walls pulsed faintly with celestial light, like starlight caught in stone. In the center, hovering above an altar of lunar marble, was a book. But it wasn't made of parchment. It was made of light. Elion approached, breath shallow, and the book responded. It opened. Pages turned themselves slowly, revealing symbols not of this world. Star lines twisted and merged, forming visions, an island rising, crowned by crystal towers, then sinking slowly into black water. The sea turned red. The stars blinked out. Then one flame remained, a flame in the shape of a man. Prometheus. The name whispered itself inside Elion's mind like a dream fragment. And below the vision, etched in a language lost to time, when the last map burns, the island will remember. Elion stepped back. The floor beneath him trembled. Far off, beyond the glass dome, he saw a star fall from the sky, but it didn't burn like stardust. It sank into the sea with a soundless pulse. He looked again at the symbol on the disk, a spiral, a dream turning inward, and for the first time he wondered, were the stars not guiding them, but warning them? Beneath the city's radiant towers and its glistening marble causeways, far below the tide-kissed gardens and golden domes of Atlantis, there was a chamber untouched by sun or moon. It was called the Cavern of Sleep. No one alive knew its true purpose. No one but one. She was old, not in the way of mortals, but in the way of tides, of deep roots, of things forgotten. Her name was not spoken aloud, but among the few who still knew of her existence, she was called the Dream Keeper. She sat in stillness at the center of the cavern, upon a stone seat that pulsed gently with a violet glow. Her eyes were closed, but she saw all. Around her, the walls shimmered with illusions, memories, from across millennia. Births, wars, songs never sung again, and dreams, so many dreams. They drifted across the chamber like silken veils, weightless and glowing, each one a memory left behind by those who had slept within Atlantis. Every soul who had ever dreamed on this island had left an echo here, and she remembered them all. She had been placed here by the first flame bearers, guardians of the celestial fire that had fallen from the heavens long before Atlantis was ever carved from the sea. Her duty was not to speak, nor to act, but to hold, to remember, to watch. Tonight she stirred. A ripple moved through the dreaming chamber. One of the veils had darkened, unraveling like ash in water. Another faded completely. A silence fell, deep and wrong. The Dream Keeper opened her eyes for the first time in over 300 years. They glowed. In her mind, she saw what Elian had uncovered, the Book of Light, the forgotten symbol. The flame in the shape of a man. She whispered a name to the stones. Prometheus. And the stones whispered back. He watches still. She reached into a bowl of starlight beside her and withdrew a thread of silver mist. Holding it between two ancient fingers, she blew gently upon it. The thread soared upward, passing through layers of stone, water, and memory, until it reached the surface, until it reached her. A girl asleep in one of the upper chambers of the Temple of the Tides. Her name was Lyra, and she was dreaming the last dream of Atlantis. In a small circular chamber beneath a dome carved with spiraling seashells and silver constellations, Lyra slept on a bed of kelp-woven silk. The walls shimmered with phosphorescent algae, casting the room in a soft, dreamlike glow. Her breath was slow. Her fingers twitched, and somewhere between the seconds of sleep and the rhythm of the waves above, her dream began. She was standing at the edge of a great ocean. That this was no ordinary sea. It was made of echoes, a vast, shimmering expanse of sound and memory, where each ripple carried the voice of a long-lost soul. Waves hummed lullabies sung by mothers from vanished cities. The wind whispered forgotten poems of lovers lost beneath collapsing stars. Lyra stepped forward, her bare feet barely making a mark on the silver sands. Above her, the sky was velvet dark and studded with stars that blinked like sleeping eyes. She could feel the pull of the ocean, not just in her body, but in her bones. This was a place outside time, a place Atlantis itself dreamed of. From the horizon, a figure approached. He was tall and radiant, not with light, but with warmth, the fire of memory. His presence didn't burn, but remembered heat. It was Prometheus, not in chains, not in torment, but in memory. He looked at Lyra, not with eyes, but with recognition. "You've been here before," he said gently, though his lips did not move. "Every dreamer walks this shore once." "Is this where Atlantis ends?" Lyra asked, though she didn't know how the words came. Prometheus looked out over the ocean of echoes. "No," he whispered. "This is where Atlantis remembers." He reached into the folds of his robe and drew out a single ember, glowing golden orange, barely alive. He held it out to her. "This is the last flame of what your people once were. It belongs to the dreamers now. Keep it close, for what's coming cannot be undone, but it can be understood." As Lyra reached for the ember, the sky above cracked like glass. A tremor passed through the echoing sea. The voices rose, frantic and mournful. A storm was coming, not of wind and rain, but of forgetting. And from far, far below the sea floor, something ancient began to stir. Lyra's eyes flew open in her chamber above the temple of the tides. The ember was still in her hand, and it was warm. The sun rose slowly over the city of blue stone, as if reluctant to cast its light upon a world that teetered on the edge of silence. The domes of Atlantis glowed like pearls caught in a dream, their crystal spires bending the early rays into prisms of quiet fire. The sea was unnaturally calm, as if it too were holding its breath. Birds did not sing. Fountains, usually dancing with joy, poured in muted rhythm. Even the wind that had once played through marble corridors now moved like a solemn guest, whispering low prayers through coral arches. Lyra stood on the balcony of the Observatory of Dreams, the ember of memory still cupped gently in her hands. Around her, the city stretched out in curves of elegance, gleaming canals, spiraled towers, and bridges carved from moonstone. It was a masterpiece built not for war or empire, but for wonder. Every building hummed faintly with the music of purpose. But on this morning, something was different. The light seemed too golden, too perfect. Like a painter adding final touches to a canvas he knew would soon be burned. Lyra's eyes wandered toward the horizon, where the sea met the sky in an endless hush of blue. There, far beyond the reefs and the glowing kelp forests, the clouds had begun to shift. They twisted inwards, downwards, as though spiraling into something deep and old. The elders had gathered at the center of the city. In the Temple of Time, the oracles sang in tones so low they were felt more than heard. Below the city's surface, engineers worked in frantic silence. Maps were unrolled, levers pulled, crystal circuits illuminated. 1,000 solutions explored, and all of them, each and every one, led back to the same conclusion. The end had already begun, but Atlantis would not meet it with screams. It would meet it with grace. Lyra turned from the rising sun and descended the marble stairs into the Hall of Reflections, her shadow trailing long and soft behind her. The air was heavy with the scent of salt, incense, and age. She passed murals telling of how the city was raised, not by kings, but by dreamers who shaped water and stone with thought alone. Every archway echoed a name lost to history. Every step whispered of the stars they once conversed with. As she walked, she felt them waking. The memories, not just hers, but the city's. As if Atlantis itself knew this was its final morning and wanted to feel every heartbeat. She reached a chamber with no doors, only a circular opening above. There the sunlight streamed in, falling on a floating orb of liquid starlight. She approached, touched it. The room bloomed with visions. Children running across water bridges, musicians playing harps made of light and wind, lovers writing letters in the air that turned to butterflies, fathers passing lanterns of memory to sons, mothers whispering secrets to the moon. All of it was beautiful, and all of it was ending. The orb flickered, faded, and then stilled. Lyra stepped back, the ember in her hand pulsing, as if alive. Outside, the light of the sun dimmed slightly, as a shadow moved across the sky, too large to be a cloud, too silent to be a storm. Something ancient was coming, and Atlantis was ready. As the day unfolded, like a breath held too long, the sun that had once risen in brilliance now hovered in place, unwilling to move. Time in Atlantis was no longer a flowing river. It had become a lake, still and unnaturally deep. And above, the sky changed. At first, it was subtle. The clouds parted in symmetrical spirals, forming shapes no natural wind could make. Circles within circles, reminiscent of the sigils carved into the foundation stones of the city. These were strong glyphs of origin, long forgotten by all but the oldest of the dream tenders. Then the stars began to appear. In daylight, one by one, they blinked into existence, pale but present, whispers of eternity, shining through the veil of time. And stranger still, they were moving, not with the patient rhythm of the cosmos, but with urgency. Some clustered, some spiraled inward, some disappeared entirely. In the observatory of dreams, Lyra watched in silence, the ember still glowing in her hand, though fainter now. The scholars around her murmured with fear, thinly veiled in wonder. "The constellations are leaving their places," whispered Elder Naros, staring up at the dome. "They're abandoning the sky." Another, pale and shaking, added, "The stars are fleeing something." Lyra said nothing. She felt it. A presence. Not a creature, not a god, but a memory too old to be named. Something not born of flesh or fire, but of imbalance. Atlantis had held the flame of knowing too long, and now the sky itself came to collect the debt. Outside, people began to gather in the city's wide squares. Not in panic, not yet. They stood in clusters, holding one another. Parents lifted children onto their shoulders to see the strange sky. Elders hummed the oldest lullabies, as though offering calm to the trembling heavens. On the shores, dolphins circled the harbor in tight spirals. Birds flew in reverse, as if pulled backward in time. And in the gardens, flowers that only bloomed at death, the night lotus, opened their blue-black petals. Lyra walked to the edge of the grand aqueduct, overlooking the ocean gate. Far beyond, the sea began to rise, not in waves, but in shapes. It formed towers, tunnels, faces, as though the ocean was remembering all it had swallowed, and was bringing its memories to the surface one last time. Then came the sound. Not thunder, not wind, a bell. But no one had rung it. It came from everywhere and nowhere. Low, deep, final. The kind of sound that ends dreams. The people of Atlantis turned to the sky. And the sky blinked. A single star in the center of the firmament grew brighter, brighter, until it wasn't a star at all, but an eye. And it was watching, waiting, weeping. Beneath the temple of echoing waters, where only moonlight and memory could reach, there lay a chamber no map recorded, and no priest dared to enter, except in dreams. Its walls pulsed like the inside of a seashell, lit not by torches, but by the thoughts of those who stood within it. It was said that the mirror of Atlantis, the mirror of everything that was, could reflect not faces, but truths. And now it had awakened. Lyra descended the spiral steps carved from pearlstone, her fingers brushing the damp wall, still humming with the ancient vibrations of the bell that no one had rung. She carried the ember gently in a glass vessel, now dim as a whisper, but still warm. When she reached the bottom, the chamber greeted her, not with silence, but with song. A soundless hymn filled the space, one not meant for ears, but for the bones. It was the lullaby of Atlantis, sung only once at the dawn of the city's birth, and never again. And yet here it was, looping endlessly, as though time itself had begun to fold inward. At the center of the chamber stood the mirror, not made of glass or metal, but of memory. A smooth surface, dark as a still lake under starlight, and just as deep. Lyra stepped toward it, and the mirror responded. It did not show her reflection. It showed Atlantis, but not the Atlantis she knew. Not towers of crystal and gold, nor the spiraling aqueducts singing with water. It showed the first Atlantis, the one born not of stone but of light. Before there were kings, before there were laws, before the flame, she saw a city suspended above water, held aloft by thought and trust, not architecture. Children shaping the wind, laughing as clouds danced around them. Language made of color, painted into the air. And in the center, a quiet flame, small, flickering, offered to the people by a being made entirely of starlight and sorrow, the flame of knowing. Prometheus had not stolen it, he had given it, and Atlantis, in its eagerness to preserve, had tried to keep it still. But fire does not like to be still. It wants to move, to change, to burn and become. And now, because it had been caged, it had begun to forget. The mirror flickered, the images dissolved, and new ones formed. This time not the past, but possibilities. Atlantis after the fall, or Atlantis never built, or Atlantis as song alone, remembered only in dreams by creatures not yet born. Then Lyra saw herself, older, wiser, walking the shores of another world, carrying not flame, but silence. She stepped back. Tears streaked her cheeks. The mirror whispered, "Nothing truly burns. It only changes form. So too does the dream." Behind her, the chamber began to tremble. Water trickled from the ceiling like tears from stone. Above, the sky had begun to crack, and the sea had started to remember its power. The heart of Atlantis was a circle of white stone at the very center of the city, where 12 marble bridges met like the spokes of a wheel. At its core was the Luminara, a crystal spire said to be the first thing ever built on the island. They said its tip touched the thoughts of the stars. Tonight, the heart glowed with a light that was not fire, nor sun, nor moon. It was strong memory. Atlanteans, young and old, carried lanterns lit with soft blue flames, each representing a dream they wished to preserve. The people gathered silently. They were not panicking, not yet. The skies above had begun to fracture into spirals of light. The sea around the island had drawn back, exposing black sand and coral spires like the bones of the world. Children clung to their parents. Rare musicians held their instruments but did not play. Priests whispered to the water, their prayers curling into mist before reaching the heavens. And then, from the temple of echoing waters, Lyra appeared. She walked barefoot along the white stones, her hands cupping the ember of Prometheus in a crystal vessel. The light within it flickered weakly, like a heartbeat fighting to remain. All eyes followed her. The murmurs ceased. Even the wind seemed to bow its head. High Oracle Lyris descended from her marble dais. leaning on a staff carved with the spirals of creation. Her silver hair moved in the still air like threads of moonlight. "Child," she said, voice soft as breaking waves, "you have touched the mirror." Lyra nodded. "I saw what we were, and what we are about to become." The oracle closed her eyes, as if the words confirmed what she had carried in silence for centuries. A low hum rose from the bridges as the crystal circuits beneath the city awakened. Ancient energy lines etched into stone, pulsing with blue fire. The Luminara spire began to glow, casting long shadows over the crowd. Lyra stepped to the center and held up the ember. "The island is not dying," she whispered. "It is changing. We are not sinking. We are returning to the dream that bore us." A murmur swept the crowd. Fear and awe mingled. Then the first tremor struck. The stones quivered beneath their feet. The sea roared, finally, remembering its voice. From the horizon, walls of water rose higher than the tallest spires, glinting with moonlight like curtains of glass. The people of Atlantis knelt, not in terror, but in acceptance. They would leave the world of flesh and salt. They would become memory. Lyra lowered the ember to the stone. The Luminara's light embraced it, and for a moment the whole city glowed brighter than day. Then the bridges cracked. The first tower fell, and Atlantis began to sing its last song. The first tower of Atlantis fell into the sea with a sound like a great drum, deep and mournful. It did not shatter. It sank gracefully, leaving a spiral of bubbles and glimmering dust in its wake. The people did not scream. They listened, because the island had begun to sing. It was not a song made by instruments or voices, but by the world itself, the groaning of marble bridges as they cracked, the sigh of wind moving through hollow spires, the deep, resonant hum of the sea reclaiming its stone. It was a requiem, a lullaby, a farewell. Lyra knelt at the heart of Atlantis, the Luminara casting a blue halo around her. The ember she had carried flickered, brighter now, as if the island's soul was passing into it. Above, the sky continued to fracture. The single star eye that had appeared before was now weeping golden. Streams of light, and for a moment it looked as if heaven itself was mourning. Then the second tremor struck. Streets tilted like the decks of great ships. Fountains burst into pillars of water, spraying skyward before collapsing back in silver rain. The ocean began to rise at the edges, curling over itself, forming walls that reflected the city's final beauty like mirrors. Lyra looked around at her people. They were holding hands, closing their eyes. Some whispered goodbyes, some sang, some simply listened to the last music of their home. From the western cliffs, Elion clutched the marble railing, heart pounding. The sea before him had turned into a colossus of memory, shimmering with visions, children running through sunlit streets, festivals that would never come again, lovers dancing beneath the moons, and beneath those visions, dark shapes moved in the water, ancient guardians, serpents of coral and silver, rising one last time to escort the island into the deep. The third tremor came like a heartbeat. Bridges split. Lanterns fell into the waves and snuffed out, one by one. The song of Atlantis rose to a crescendo, a harmony of stone, sea, and sky. And in that moment, Lyra finally understood the whisper of Prometheus. Nothing truly burns. It only changes form. The island was not dying. It was becoming memory. As the final light of the Luminara touched the ocean, a spiral of energy rose from the sinking city. It carried with it voices, dreams, and echoes, a constellation of Atlantis, scattered into the night sky. And for anyone who dreams by the sea, if they listen closely to the waves, they will hear it still, the song of the island that sank, but never truly left. The sea was calm. Days, weeks, perhaps even centuries had passed since the night Atlantis disappeared beneath the waves. The ocean's surface gave no hint of the towers that once touched the sky, nor the marble bridges that had sung to the wind. And yet, at night, when the moon rose high and the world grew still, the sea would whisper. Fishermen spoke of it first. They claimed that when they drifted into the silent waters where no stars reflected, they could hear faint songs rising from the deep, not in words, but in memories. Children laughing, bells echoing from marble halls, a heartbeat that was not their own. Some grew afraid and sailed away. Others listened, and some, without knowing why, dreamed of a city of light. That night, in time, the whispers spread to the shores. A lonely traveler sleeping by the waves would wake with tears in his eyes, carrying a dream he could not remember, but which left warmth in his chest. They would say, "The sea is telling us a story." And so the story traveled, from firelight to firelight, from lullaby to lullaby, until it became legend. Somewhere beyond mortal reach, Lyra drifted in an endless ocean of light. She was not cold. She was not afraid. The ember she had carried was now a star above her heart. And she knew that Atlantis had not died. It had become a dream, one that would wander through the minds of humanity forever, teaching them to imagine, to create, to remember. And if ever someone stood by the ocean, closed their eyes, and listened long enough, they would hear the final words of the island that sank. In the block quote in Ember End, "I will tell thee, remember them forever. We are not gone. We are the dream beneath your dreams. And as long as you listen, The fire will never die.